Before it could spit me out, I spit myself out. That's a very weird sentence to say, but let's stop running away from our problems, because I know I definitely have been a runner, a track star. I felt like because I didn't have the answers, I was a failure. Hello again. So this is my second time filming this video because, like the title says, let's be candid, the first time around didn't go as planned. So here's to part 2, take 2, and it's fitting because this is chapter 2 of the series. In terms of running away from problems in life, I'm 25, which is young but old, not old, but like getting more serious in age, and it's time to stop doing that. So this is for anyone my age, older, younger. Things that I've learned since turning 25 and things that I implement now that I wish I had a better understanding of when I was a bit younger. But yeah, so today's episode is kind of like embracing the now, where you are in life, and not feeling as though you need to change your environment or like change your setting to become a new version of yourself. I find that that's usually the answer a lot of us think will help us. Like, oh, if I move to this location, I'll be more productive, I'll meet new people and stuff like that, which is the case. But at the same time, speaking of moving environments, I moved back to New York, so if you hear background noise, that's why. But I find that a lot of the times we run away from our problems thinking that a different location or a different group of people will ultimately shift who we are as individuals, when really that's not the case. Who you are is who you are, no matter where you go or who you surround yourself with. The environment definitely does have an effect or like an impact, but you can't run away from your problems expecting to be able to leave them behind. You're going to take some of them with you. And that's kind of what I wanted to go into today. I moved back to New York. I used to live here a few years ago, but I left hoping to discover who I am and who I was as an individual, because I felt like that was something kind of impossible to do here. New York is a difficult city to live in. It's very fast paced. And like they say, if you can't keep up, it'll spit you out. And essentially, before it could spit me out, I spit myself out. That's a very weird sentence to say, but yeah, so I moved from New York all the way across the country to the West Coast to a very small town in Oregon. Completely different from New York, not fast-paced at all. So it was an interesting experience, to say the least. But I thought that moving out of New York would allow me the opportunity to explore who I was as an individual. And I felt like that was impossible here. In hindsight, it definitely was possible. Sorry. It definitely was possible in New York. I just was feeding into the illusion that in order to find out who I was, I had to change my entire environment, which helped, but I don't think that it's necessary. And I think that going back to what I said earlier, we find or we think that that's the only solution, is to change our immediate environment. But your problems follow you wherever you go. And I found that to be the case with me. I moved back to New York recently, and I have loved being here since, because a lot of the things I took for granted having moved away are things that I ended up missing the most. The noise, the people, the fast-pacedness of the city, things like that, and just like the liveliness of the city. Not to say that other places aren't lively, but New York really does push you out of your comfort zone. And I moved because I wanted to be comfortable. But growth doesn't come from being comfortable. You kind of have to be uncomfortable to see the max amount of growth. All right, so that was the first thing that I wanted to talk about. But yeah, so going to part 2, we kind of already mentioned this, but I moved away because I wanted to escape the noise of the city, and then also just the noise within myself that I felt like was a result of living in the city. But really, the noise followed me where I went. I moved to a very quiet place, but I still felt myself having the same questions and unknowns within myself with who I was and like who I was as a person. I thought that changing my environment would provide all those answers, and it didn't. What provided the answers was just looking internally, and that's not dependent on where you are. That's just a matter of taking into consideration the perspective of which you're viewing yourself. So yeah, don't feel like you need to move or change your environment to have an escape from the noise. Just know, as sad as this may sound, the noise is going to follow you wherever you go until you do the work to lessen it within yourself. But yeah, moving on to part 3, which is to find acceptance with where you are, both environment wise, but then also in terms of where you are on your journey. That's not to say not to chase after your dreams, but that's to say be appreciative and happy of where you are right now on the journey. A lot of us just think about like where we want to be or the versions of ourselves that we would like to be, but we don't really take the time to appreciate where we are or who we are right now in the moment, which is something that we should do because we always like to live in the future. We like to live in terms of where we're ideally going to be living, the ideal jobs that we'll have, ideal careers, the ideal version of ourselves and the ideal version of our environments. But until we get there, we have to really take note of each step along the way to actually value that when we do achieve it. So it's not to say to stop dreaming, but it's to say to like take a step back and look around you and realize, wow, this is the amount of growth that I've already made, but I do have a lot more growth that I have in store. But it's like be reflective. Essentially, take the time to be reflective because that's how you'll be able to see where you need to grow more as an individual, but then you could also grow an appreciation and like gratitude towards how much growth you have already accomplished at this point in time. So yeah, take a moment, give yourself a break, not to say like kick back entirely, but like give yourself grace. I find that we as individuals don't really give ourselves enough grace as we give those around us. But yeah, don't take it easy on yourself, but be easy in terms of like judgment that you have towards yourself or like feeling like you're not exactly where you want to be. You're exactly where you're supposed to be right now. And that's not to say like if you guys are in bad situations, you guys should be there. No one should be in bad situations, but it's to say that this is a moment or a stepping stone in your journey to getting you where you want to be ideally. So look at it like that, or take it or try to adapt that sort of perspective because it'll make where you are a lot easier knowing that this isn't your permanent. Like you're not always going to be where you are right now in life, and that's like good and bad. If you're in a good point in your life, take appreciation of that and know that things may get harder or things may get more difficult. So appreciate what you have now. But then also on the flip side, if you're in a hard position in life right now, just know that it's not always going to be like this. Things will get better. And have hope. Hope really goes a really long way. And you have to be hopeful for yourself first and foremost, because if you're not showing up for yourself or you're not being hopeful, who's going to be hopeful for you? Like you need to be able to have that fuel and fire within you, not coming from the external world or those who surround you. You have to like show up for yourself in that way. Fourth point that I wanted to go into, just know that not every no is a no. And if you're facing rejection or setbacks in life, just know that it's instead of a rejection or a hard no, it's just a redirection into a different field. A different door is going to open. Not every door that you think is the door to open for you is meant for us. Like if every door just opened up for us, there would be no growth, no self-development. Without like redirection and stuff like that, you wouldn't be who you are now if you just received yes, yes, yes to everything that you went after. No's and rejections are good for self-development and just like personal growth. Honestly, you wouldn't want everything to be handed to you. I mean, some people may want everything handed to them in life, but you wouldn't really have a strong sense of character and growth. I find that growth really happens from those difficult moments, those places of rejection where you're just like, wait, like what do I do now? That's when you're just scatterbrained and you're just like trying to figure things out. But that's how you learn to trust yourself more, because you can reflect back to those difficult moments when you were in a sticky situation and you had to rely on yourself and you got out. Like you found a solution, you found a different direction to go in order to no longer be in those hard times or those setbacks for much longer than you had to be. So that's the fourth. The fifth thing that I wanted to go over was what lies ahead of us is unknown. A lot of us like to plan ahead, and planning is great and all, but honestly, we can plan but so much. What I like to think is to expect the unexpected, because that's all that is to be expected. All of what we think we know is unknown, essentially. We could do but so much planning, but I'm sure if you're human, we've all created plans and wanted them to go, or believe that they would go accordingly, but there's always something that happens, and that's life. No matter how smoothly things are going, there's always going to be a bump, a big bump or a small bump in the road, but it's just to gain acceptance with that. I feel as though if you know that those things are going to happen, like those big bumps or small bumps, when they do happen, it's going to impact you a lot less negatively compared to if you just constantly think that things are going to go as you plan them out to go. If you gain this acceptance with the unknowing, you're not going to see life as something that's trying to challenge you in every step of the way. You're just going to see it as its own thing, kind of like you have what you have in mind as to like how you would like things to go, but also just know that life has its own way of doing things, and it's not to work against it, but to try to work with it or like alongside it, so that when life throws in those curveballs, you're not caught off guard entirely as to like, oh, what the heck, what do I do now? And you're like stuck. Because the most difficult thing to do is to get stuck, because then you have to get unstuck. But if you realize that something is going to happen unexpectedly, and it does happen, you're going to take a step back and be like, okay, well, I wasn't expecting this, but let me bounce back. Like, let me change my plans to accommodate this setback so that I can continue moving forward. Versus if you just kind of are always fighting against life, and when those challenges do come and you get stuck each and every single time, you're going to see that there's limited growth, there's limited self-development, because instead of working alongside life, you're going to begin victimizing yourself and thinking, well, why does this always happen to me? Nothing ever goes according to plan. I feel like I'm a failure and stuff like that. And that's the wrong headspace to be in, because you could just go down a deep, dark spiral. Whereas if you work more so parallel to life or aligned with life, you're going to get the setbacks and be like, oh, like that was hard, but let me see how I can work around this. Let me see how I can work with this. But yeah, that was the final tidbit of information that I wish I learned a lot sooner in life, because I felt as though a lot of things were happening to me when I was younger, versus things were just happening. But I would like personalize a lot of things and feel like, oh my gosh, like this happened, I don't know what to do. It's not to necessarily have the answers, but it's to know that you don't have to have the answers. And I felt like because I didn't have the answers, I was a failure of some sorts, or like I was confused. I didn't know how to go about shifting my footing in life. It's not all about knowing the answers. It's just not about getting stuck, essentially. Just know to be adaptable, or to try and be adaptable, rather than becoming stagnant, which is difficult, but I think it's a learned like practice. Like you have to constantly work at it. It's not something that ever will be on default, I think. I mean, it is for some people, but I think for the majority of us, we have to constantly be proactive and know that when setbacks do happen, not to let it make us get stuck or stagnant. But yeah, that was the last little bit of information. I do have a little bonus tip, and that's honestly just to have fun and embrace each moment and encounter, because life is fleeting. Like life is happening really quick. I remember just yesterday I was a little kid. I mean, I'm still very young, but life goes by very fast. And the older you get, the shorter and shorter years become. Now a year really realistically feels like between 3 to 6 months. We're already at the halfway point, and New Year's to me was still just like yesterday. But yeah, know that life is fleeting. So don't be too hard on yourself. Don't feel like a failure. No matter what age you are, you can always change your life around. I'm making this at 25, but there's no like cap. You could be 89 years old and still live a completely different life to the life you've lived up to that point. So don't be so hard on yourself. I find that a lot of us tend to be very hard on ourselves, very judgmental about our progress and amount of growth and self-development. But just know that there's always time to grow and to improve yourself and your environment, your situation. But yeah, don't be so difficult on yourself, and don't feel like you have to run away. Running away is a lot easier in terms of growing and self-development, but you're running away and bringing all your problems with you. So just know that no matter how far you run, your problems are right there with you and they're not going anywhere until you do the work with yourself internally. But yeah, it's not always about changing your environment. It's about changing your environment from within. But that's the end of this episode, chapter 2 of Let's Be Candid. If you guys have any more topics that you'd like me to go over or to like go into more detail, let me know down below. I love having these types of conversations with people in my day-to-day life, but I also wanted to present it in a video format to like reach a bigger audience. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.